5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask, I guess in general, but most especially for United. First of all, it's clear that we have so much air traffic. And the incident on April the 9th involving the forcible removal of a passenger on board at United Flight 3411 has brought into question how airlines treat its passengers. And this really is not a new issue. In 2016, the Department of Transportation received 12,766 consumer complaints against U.S. airlines. So it's impossible to say how many of these are legitimate, illegitimate, how many other incidences were unreported. But I guess what I need to ask first is, what were the rules in place to determine who would be removed from the plane?
Thank you, ma'am. It was a simple, automatic process that dealt with, without all the complexity, what someone paid and whether they were enrolled in our Mileage Plus program. It is a difficult choice when we get to that point. All our policies that we've introduced are to prevent this situation ever from happening, because it is an impossible situation. How do you pick amongst all of you as to who sits where? You have a process for where you sit, and we have a process. And so specifically, the policy that we had and continue to have is around the fare that you paid and whether you're not, what level you were in our mileage.
So this fare was cheaper than the rest of them, or the cheapest, I guess.
It was one of the lower fares, yes.
What about the rest of you? Is that the way you determine who to mistreat?
Congresswoman, no. Our, in the case of an involuntary denied boarding, our selection criteria is tied to whether or not the customer had a seat assignment. And if there are multiple customers that have a seat assignment, it would be based on the last customer to check in for the flight.
Congresswoman, same thing here, being very egalitarian. It's basically the last person that checked in at the gate, arrived at the gate is, and again, our goal is to always not have any involuntary, but to treat all those folks as a voluntary denied boarding if we have to, and deal with that before boarding. But no, it's in the order of basically the check-in at the gate.
So if someone checks in and is given a seat, and someone checks in later who paid more for a seat, they can unseat the person who is seated?
No, ma'am. In the case again of Southwest, if the aircraft has 143 seats, for example, and the 144th person, the overbook, checks in, they do not have a seat. So they would be the first person that we attempt to work with to voluntarily deny board them through compensation.
Okay. But I understand this person was seated, had been admitted by a ticket, and was seated in a seat. And the person who they were trying to get on did not have to purchase a seat. So how do you make that criteria?
It was a mistake of epic proportions in hindsight, clearly, and our policies broke down in that regard. The situation specifically was that a crew member trying to get to another flight, in essence to, ironically, in a customer service-oriented fashion, to try and make sure that that crew arrived at the next aircraft so 150 people could get to their destinations. And it's a horrible calculus to put people in. Do you make the flight for 150, or you seriously inconvenience 2 or 3 on the current flight? And so one of the policy changes we introduced last week is that once you sit on our aircraft and you are on a seat, other than for safety or security reasons, we will not take you off that flight.
Okay, now, I understand there were 4 seats needed, 3 had been given. If that one person had not arrived at the next spot, would that have stopped that airline from taking off?
Yes, ma'am. There's a certain level of in-flight and flight ops crews that we have to have on an aircraft, and it would not have left. And we did try to find alternative aspects with regards to getting a different flight crew in there. But this is a fairly well-orchestrated process throughout the world to get 700 flights in the air on any given moment. And so flight crews are not readily available in all our different locations. So we did try to look at that process. But
so you have 2 groups of rules to look at. Did you address the rule of what happens if a person, I'm sorry, my time is out, but let me just finish this question for you to think about. If that person had not gotten to the next flight that you were trying to get there, what is the alternative if that person couldn't get there with 3 already?
Sure. And we have a
Board.
policy that we built in. I'm happy to follow up with you.
Thank you, Mr.